Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Hashira Half Hour. And once again, in perfect Mappa fashion, we are finally bringing you a recap of Attack on Titan Season 4, Part 3, Part 2, Part 2. Almost 2 months after we brought Part 1. Actually, I think it's been over 2 months since we brought Part 1. Oops, but life happens. We're all busy, so things happen. But I am always joined by my friends.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be back here. Not as happy to have to live through watching this episode again, but we're fine. Everything is fine. It's so bizarre. It's been, I probably have started each of these Attack on Titan podcasts exactly the same way, but truly being on the journey of this story for like the last 10 years has been wild, and it feels so surreal that it's over. I don't know, like so rewarding, but in some ways it's like I almost can't believe that there's not more still to come, probably because of how long the last season got dragged out. But I digress, and I loved every minute that did come out.
On the contrary, having started this literally as season 4, after the first part of season 4 aired, I can't believe it's over either, because this was a wild ride for me as well. And to be talking about one of the final chapters of this show that has made a very large impact on my life, even though I've only known about it for a year or two, I still feel the sentiment of, wow, I can't believe it's over.
Yeah, and to echo what you guys said, with Attack on Titan being that first anime that I watched when I decided I want to watch anime, it holds a special place in my heart too. So it also feels weird that it's finally over and that there's not more to come is a really weird feeling still to this day, even though at the time of recording this, it's already been 3 months since this episode aired, which is crazy. But diving right into this chapter, it does begin with a very philosophical speech from Zeke about how the world began, that humans are the only ones that can repopulate, and how he couldn't understand what the founder Ymir wanted. And that's why, Eren got through to her, as it seems like he did. He couldn't understand it considering she spent the last 2,000 years surviving for King Fritz. Armin speaks on his experience with running up the hill with Eren and Mikasa and how he felt he was born to do that. This conversation was very philosophical and, in my opinion, up for interpretation. So I kind of wanted to give us all the opportunity to speak on how we viewed this conversation.
Y'all are confused? Girl, I'm confused.
That is
Literally.
that is like my smart way of saying I was confused, and I still am.
Okay, what I think this means is that Ymir wanted her own freedom because she was surviving for King Fritz for so long. And the part about Armin being born to run up that hill is a chain to your destiny, I guess I could say. And so I think that's kind of where it comes from. It's like a dialectic of freedom and destiny. So I think that's a little bit where that like entire conversation is pushing.
Yeah, I mean, Zeke's really coming in like the stoner friend at the party, right? Talk about
For real.
He's like, got this big brain moment, guys.
Dropping a truth bomb right here with his beard.
Oh my god, for real. But on a serious note, I think that he's like speaking at this point from like, he's like gone through the stages of grief at this point for his plan, his like euthanization plan. And I think that he feels that humans cling desperately to life, and humankind has clinged desperately to like perpetuating that life and to repopulating, when all that has happened in this world really has like led to a lot of suffering. And so to him, the suffering like outweighs the good things I think that have happened, to the point that he's like, I don't think any human should exist at all anymore, and I can't do anything about it because now I'm stuck here in the paths, but like everything's pointless essentially. And he'd forgotten about like some of those things that did make life a little bit better. And so it's like, yes, there is this sense of suffering. Ymir suffered, but she loved somebody in whatever kind of way that she was able to, and she clung to that, I think. Armin obviously loves his best friends, and so even if he's going through this very Grecian, like Sisyphus, going up the hill over and over and over, if that's what he comes back to in his mind and that's what he was born to do, then, like, yes, maybe it's like this futile struggle against something that you maybe don't stand a chance against. Maybe it is that chain to your destiny, but he's doing it there with his two best friends. So very, very philosophical. I'm not sure if I even really know exactly what Zeke was getting at either, but I think it's just like two different perspectives. Zeke is very hopeless, and Armin, I think, is grateful for the suffering, because with suffering comes beauty. Zeke is not so grateful because he emphasizes the suffering a bit more.
Yeah, I think it was two different perspectives of life, because obviously the suffering in Attack on Titan is a little bit more intense than day-to-day life for a lot of regular people in the real world, but all of us suffer in some way, and I think Zeke has just chosen to only think about that suffering, and his only solution to that is simply why does this life exist, because it's just suffering. Well, Armin chooses to have that one thing that he was born to do, which is a theme that we've seen so many times in the show. I was born into this world. Aaron said that multiple times, and it's like everyone seems to have this one purpose, and is that purpose enough to keep you going? Zeke's purpose has not been enough to keep him going, while someone like Ymir, for whatever reason, because of how much she loved King Fritz, which we'll talk about more in the third part, I think. That was her purpose for life, so she wanted to keep on living. Armin's purpose in life was to be with his friends, and then that helped Zeke realize his purpose in life was to toss that ball, because he saw the baseball while Armin held the leaf, which I thought was really interesting too. All good things, though. They both do come to the realization that the past Titans still have like consciousness in the paths, even though these people have been killed. They're still like kind of living on in this alternate reality type thing. They're all connected, and Ymir was really seeking connection. That seemed to be what she thought her life was for, was to seek that connection. They speak to all of them and ask for their help, which we then see are, I almost said slayers. We see our scouts back on the back of Eren, and these past Titans that they've interacted with in the paths are now saving them. And we are now showing how human connection can be more powerful than fighting alone, maybe.
Oh yeah, this was like Marvel Endgame for weebs, guys. This was like everybody, like the multiverse is coming, and all these past forms of these type, which was so cool because so many of them we had. Like, there were a few that we were familiar with, of course, that have since perished in the course of the show. But then there were some that it's like, oh, like that weird intro in like season 2 or whenever it was, where we saw like the dinosaur and the whale running, and not that we expressly saw like those exact titans necessarily, but there were several that were unfamiliar, but that were all fighting for this cause. And it was really interesting to see these near past and far past characters all be willing to fight for this cause, to try to like give one last final effort for humanity to push things forward and to like end the chain. um it was really satisfying. I don't know, I thought it was really cool that like right at the moment where all the scouts are kind of ready to throw in the towel, it's like here comes backup from the least likely of sources.
Yeah, kind of sharing the sentiment of the endgame situation. It was like the hype moment that everyone needs to get back in the fight. It's really interesting kind of to see all of them working together at this point because of some of the dialectics there and some of like the tension between that. Like we saw Grisha's Titan too, which was like he was manipulated by Eren in the past at one point to like turn him into a Titan, but that was as a kid and he didn't understand it. And so like now that he's trying to almost like repent for his sins, I guess, if you will. Like, that's a really interesting take I think you could put in there. Or more powerful than fighting alone. I definitely think that's a true sentiment here, and I think it kind of really hammers home that like humans are not like an individual being. And I think this kind of relates to the real world in the sense of like the pandemic, right? We like really got isolated and we forgot like how social we are as people and like how much we need social connection. So I think that's just like one little tidbit maybe you could take away from that piece.
Yeah, I think that is true. And in a lot of stories that I can think of off the top of my head, it's like you have to fight with people in order to win. And they were at a like the all-time low. Like they've had their moments in this fight where it's been like this is it, and they've had something, kind of save them, like Falco and the previous chapter showing up with the Titan with wings, and now it's this one. And like again, they were like at the lowest of lows. Reiner was like done, Mikasa was even done. It was like there was no hope. And to see these Titans, which many of them for the first time we're seeing them fight on the good side. It's our first time actually cheering for this Titan, because this Titan has been the enemy for as long as we can remember. So to see them all, kind of turning on Aaron's ideals and helping these guys get out of there alive was really a special moment and made me tear up, just like the moments in Endgame, like you guys said. Like I was like, ah. We this scene, Zeke, he comes out of the paths and is there, and he has this like moment of relief. He's talking about how good the weather is, and to me it's clear he's coming to terms with his life, because he knows Levi is watching him. He knows Levi has one job to do that he's been obsessed with since he was told to do this job. And then Levi fulfills that job that Erwin gave him back in season 3. At this point, it's been, I think, around 4 to 5 years since Erwin gave him that job. And Levi cuts Zeke's head off. Zeke is now dead. The rumbling is stopped. Was this a satisfying way for Zeke to end?
Do I feel like it was satisfying? No. Do I feel like it was proper? Yes. I don't think there's any other way that we really could have seen Zeke go out. Do I think maybe, or I wish that Zeke could have stayed alive and maybe like Levi didn't need to kill him? Yeah. Because like at the end of the day, like just because he was a bad guy doesn't make him a bad guy, like he really just got mishandled, if you will. Like he really had good intentions, I think. And Noah, I know if you're listening, you're gonna love this part, so you're welcome. Shout out to you. Zeke was a really interesting character throughout the entire thing. Like he tried his best to kind of keep peace when he could, and I think it's a little bit sad to see him die. However, Levi's my favorite character in the show, so to see him get to accomplish his goal, I mean, what else could I have asked for there?
Okay, I'm going to give a controversial yet brave opinion that is similar but different. I also, on a selfishly personal level, did not find this moment super satisfying for different reasons. I agree that Zeke was absolutely like a super interesting character that was like very nuanced and layered. However, I do think that he needed to die for the context of this story, knowing his beliefs. My problem with it though really is that like I wish that Levi had gotten like his big hero moment that seemed like it was coming in Levi versus Beast Titan in season 3. I think we can all probably agree that that's at least top 3 moments, if not like for me probably top 1 moment in the show. Like it's such a fantastic scene. The animation is incredible. The tension is really high, and Levi's my favorite character in Attack on Titan also. So like again, and this is like with me prefacing saying I think that Attack on Titan is an absolute masterwork. I understand the ending of Levi has really been beaten down by the end of this show, and it's kind of about like passing it off to that next generation of fighters. And while he's still in the fight, he's not like at the same capacity that he once was because of the fights and challenges he's already taken on. So maybe like the simplicity of this scene and the way that it happened. There was no chase. And he, like, at this point, Zeke's like, hey, I'm here. I didn't want to see. Like, it's almost a joke. And for Zeke, it might be that way. For Levi, like we've established, this was like his assignment from Erwin. And so for it to just happen so easily feels a little bit like patronizing to the ability that he has. And I do think it's intentional. I think that, yeah, I don't know. It's just maybe not like the exact most satisfying ending I would have hoped for, even if it might be the one that's best for the story.
I remember actually the first time I read the manga, I forgot that it had happened because it was so quick. I agree. First of all, can I just say, since both of your favorite character is Levi, must be nice having a favorite character that's alive.
For once. Let me have one. Let me have one.
I guess I should actually let Emily have her moment because
let me have one.
Rip Nanami and Rengoku. I agree. I felt that it wasn't necessarily satisfying, and I think it's partially because for me, I felt like Zeke had finally found what he was like, a life worth living. Honestly, he was like, like I actually feel good now. Like I feel like I've helped and stuff. But also at the same time, I think he felt like that because he knew Levi was about to kill him. He knew that Levi was waiting, and that he kind of just allowed it to happen. He didn't try to fight back. And also, I think it was incredibly important to the story because it made sense that with Zeke's death, that the rumbling would stop because Zeke was the royal Titan that Eren was using to enact the rumbling. So it definitely saved a lot of lives, as we saw right when it stopped. That there were multiple people who, were mere seconds away from death that escaped that death. So satisfying end to Zeke's character, yes, I think that he was fully fleshed out, but as far as the scene itself, maybe a little bit more that we could have hoped for, but still really well done. Now, the rumbling has stopped, but Eren has not. He is still fighting. But with everything going on, Jean has taken this opportunity with the help of the past Titans, and it is time to blow up Eren's neck. He calls him a suicidal maniac one more time. And really quick, a shout out to the voice actor. His voice literally cracked during that scream, which I felt like it felt so real, because if we're like shouting in that way, our voices are going to crack. And I think that was like an accident by the voice actor, and they just decided to keep that in, which was really cool. He blows up his neck, and we then see this weird bug-like creature beginning to attempt to reattach itself to Eren, which Reiner instantly jumps in to fight, and Armin resolves himself to transform and fully blow up Eren and kill him. A lot to unpack here.
Yeah. Yeah, this was like rough. And I feel like Jean is like a very controversial character for people. Like they either love him or they absolutely hate him. And I like Jean. He's not like in my top 5 list, but I do like him. I think he's funny, and this is almost a joke at this point, like this line that he gives him where he has the voice crack that goes all the way back to season 1, like very early episodes of season 1, calling him a suicidal maniac. And obviously the reasoning now is very different, but it still hits to bring their relationship full circle, even if we only get to see it for a moment. And then we get to see the weird bug, and the way that was animated is also very interesting to me over the course of the last several, because it's like, oh, okay, yeah, like who knows what it's like literally supposed to represent right there, but probably it's like that physical manifestation of humankind trying to keep things going and like continue to recreate life over and over. It keeps reattaching Eren's head. So it's kind of funny that that's like what they're trying to crush, even though in theory they would generally agree with that, but Eren's approach is again too extreme. So Armin has to step up, like you mentioned, and that's rough too. It also brings the story full circle, because we literally start, the beginning of season 1 with the colossal titan appearing out of nowhere and like blowing things to smithereens, and he's gonna like use that power to take out Eren, who is, of course, our protagonist. So very interesting. And interesting that he would say, I think his line is something like, let's do it your way, Aaron. Very strange.
See, this is why I like Armin a lot, is because like he is a very like he's a big thinker, but also like by the end of the show, like he finally like, for lack of a better term, like nuts up, if you will, and like and gets in there and is like, all right, fine, if you're gonna make me do this, like let's do this. And I think that's really cool to see like the growth of a character in the final moments of a show like that, because like that shows like true change for someone. And I think that's a really big piece of kind of his character arc, is like this final moment where he's like, we're friends, but as your friend I need to kill you. And I think that's a really powerful thing to do. John, John, you say like people hate or love John. I feel like he's just like kind of meh for me. He's just kind of there. Like he's good though. He's not that bad, and I think it's really interesting that he's coming full circle with Aaron right now and trying to, I don't know, stop him one last time from doing like more stupid stuff. But it is a very like tense scene, and I think like at this moment in time, like they're trying to just seize the opportunity that is like the opportunity to win this fight.
Yeah, I mean, they're all, except for maybe one person, which we'll talk about in a moment here, are completely resolving themselves to having to kill their friend. And for John, I thought it was interesting because he's always kind of like hated Aaron, but it's always felt more like he's been jealous almost, because the girl that John likes has always only had eyes for Aaron, and Aaron is always like just, even though he's not talented, he like, didn't he beat him in like the graduation ranking or something from the cadets, and he like is getting promoted sooner, like he seems like he's always following him. So to see John kind of take this into his own hands to the point of like making that first strike to try and kill him was really incredible to me. And to call out that moment where he says his suicidal maniac is just like, okay, that's what they've been calling him since the cadets. And it's like, oh, kind of emotional. But after Armin transforms, it's like an atomic bomb, of course. They all watch as it seems that is the end of Aaron. And everyone's like, is that it? Many of the Marleyan warriors are reunited with their families. And while Mikasa is reminded that the last conversation she had with Aaron was when he said that he hated her. Amazing to remember that conversation that happened for us like 3 years ago was the last time that she talked to him. But also, while that's going on, Annie's dad and the Marleyan soldier captain speak and help each other out. Honestly, they're asking how each other is doing. So what did you think of Mikasa's realization here and this newfound possible friendship and growth between Marleyans and Eldians?
Oh, I think this is super important. I think this is definitely the most like real world applicable side of the show, if you will, because it's like, okay, like stopping the war is one thing, but what do you do after that, right? Like I think that's what counts the most. And I think rebuilding the differences between two sides of a coin, Democrats and Republicans, just saying, um it's very, very difficult to try and bridge those gaps. So what do you do now? And is it over now? Like as Taylor Swift would say, um, it's really a question of, do you have the resolve to continue the fight of bridging the gap? And that's when it's determined it's over, is like when you can be close to one another despite each other's differences. So uh, there's a lot to kind of think about and kind of like mind noodle with there.
Yeah. I really felt for Mikasa. I mean, I feel like I always do, but like especially in this last season and in some of these last sequences, in this moment, it's like she's been unwilling to confront it, but I think that she knows that she like deeply loves Aaron, and she's known that this whole time, but she's been too afraid to really do anything about it. And so in these moments as they're leading up to like his death, she has to grapple with like all of her regrets for things that she didn't do, and also for things that did happen that didn't go the way that she wanted because she didn't do the things that she wanted to do. So I just can't even imagine, like in like the love of your life's last moments, you're worried about like the last time you spoke with them was like a fight. So the age old lesson there is like never end things on a fight. You never know whatever's going to happen. I mean, maybe they knew what was going to happen here a little bit, but generally speaking, don't leave things like on a poor note with people that you love. I think is like the very root message here, because that's what she's experiencing. As far as like the Eldians and the Marlians having to get along, do I think it will last? I don't know. These are pretty extreme differences that they've had in a long history of it. Uh so I think in the moment, humankind again is going to persevere and do what they have to do to survive. And if that means in this moment sticking together, maybe that's what it means. What does that mean 5, 10, 100 years down the road? It seems like history tends to repeat itself. So maybe more to come on that. But at least in the moment, I do think that there is a genuine interest in trying to keep as many people alive as possible, especially knowing so much of the world's populace has been wiped out.
It's like baby steps. It's not like fixing everything, but to see them actually be able to see eye to eye for a moment gives you hope that when this is all over, that the Marlenes are not going to just instantly retaliate against the Eldians because of what just has gone on. And also with Mikasa, I've gotten the feeling this entire season that she's just felt very lost because she has that love for Aaron, and he just keeps doing things that she doesn't understand, and she's constantly second guessing things that have happened. If she had said this differently, if she had done this differently, if things could have been different. And I think in this moment, like that's all coming to fruition because she's like, we have to kill him, but what happened? You know, what truly happened? Is he doing this because of the way I talked? If is he doing this simply because I said you're like family? You know, like that's something that's so real and makes me feel for Mikasa so much, and it just like breaks my heart. But you thought Aaron is not dead. It's not that easy. He has decided to transform into his own colossal titan. That hair, though, that hair was so long. I was like, dude, okay. And Armin, after walking away from him, slowly turns and faces him. That weird bug like creature is also still alive. And while many of them are trying to determine how to kill the bug thing, Levi states that they will not be able to. He said, like, we need to be realistic, and that thing is not going to be killable. We need to target Aaron instead. Can they do this? Can Mikasa do that?
Oh, well, it makes sense that they're not able to completely kill this bug thing that is like the bringer of life. If it is, as I had insinuated, that I think it represents humanity's continual push to just like keep going and to keep repopulating and to keep chasing life, even if it's futile, they're not going to be able to kill that no matter the size of the bomb, because it's both like metaphorical and also it's just like very pervasive across the human race. So that makes sense. Can Mikasa kill Aaron? I don't know. I don't know. We haven't seen, well, we have seen what happened, so I do know, but um is it like an impossible question to ask of anybody that like loves somebody though? Like absolutely. Um but she and Levi are the two that are best suited to be able to take this on. Like it has to be, I think, one of the Ackermans. There's like this destiny that we've talked about of the Ackermans already, so regardless of whether she can or not, she's going to have to. It's going to have to be one of them. It's unclear at this point whether she'll be able to stick to her guns with it.
Yeah, I was doubting Mikasa when I first read the manga. I was like, she don't got this. She's too in the abusive relationship. I'm sorry. Um, and you know, even still, like being in a relationship that's not the healthiest. Like, she still had a very deep love and respect for Aaron and the way he did things and his motivations and desires. So I can't totally blame her, but it's very difficult to watch like this struggle of like, I love you, but you're doing so many things that are like irreparable at this point, like, and you need to be stopped. How do you draw a line like that, and where does that line come to an end? It's a very difficult question to kind of ask, and a very difficult ask of someone, like kind of Emily said. So yeah, didn't think she could do it. We obviously know the ending. Surprised me, of course. So I'll leave it at that.
It's like one of those moments where it's like, do you love this person enough to stop them, essentially? Like, he's doing irreparable harm to the entire world. And it's, Emily, you're right. It has to be Levi or Mikasa. And Levi is fairly out of commission at this point. You know, he pretty much doesn't have a working leg. So we all know, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Because, by the way, the creature that ran towards everyone, as Emily has said, it's like, you know, humanity itself that keeps pushing forward. It ran towards everyone and began to emit steam. And if you're thinking that's not good, yeah, it's not good, because it is the kind that turns Eldians into Titans. They are able to figure that out fairly quickly, and Ackermans and Shifters are immune. But John, Connie, Gabby, all of these other Eldians, they're not, and they must get left behind while the others get out of there and attempt to charge at Aaron one final time. Spoiler alert, but this is one of my favorite scenes, but also a very heartbreaking scene, and it's when John and Connie have their arms draped around each other and are essentially giving each other their last words. Tissue box, anybody?
Yeah, this was really sad, and I forgot that this happened from when I read the manga. But like, especially for Connie, the irony of him getting turned into a Titan, and then all of a sudden, like, his mom, or when his mom got turned into a Titan too, like, that's just like so rough. For like watching his mom struggle, like not even being able to move, and him in the same position of like not being able to avoid his fate becoming a Titan, like, that's so like shitty. And Aaron obviously knew that that was coming, but a really heartfelt moment between both John and Connie, kind of like trying to say, hey, like, we gave it our all, right? Like, that's all we could do.
Yeah, there's something very, very somber about this moment. And again, it's like it's two more characters that we've come to either love or hate at this point. But one way, I love the group together, especially. Even if not all of them are in my like top 5 favorites, it's like there's something about the camaraderie of this team that's been together since the beginning of the story. And there's like a brotherhood or like a kinship between these two. And so seeing them know that this is probably their final moments, that they're sharing them together, it's like, I think the sense of calm is what was the most somber about the scene, because they've seen like the third village idiot die already. Like, we saw what happened with Sasha, who was like the third. And so I think, especially from that moment on, there was like this sense of reality that hit them of like, it could be any of us at any moment. And so now, like, this is the moment where they think that it's happening. And so they're at peace with it. I think they're like, well, we had a good run. We had some good memories. We get to be here together, and maybe we get to see Sasha soon. So they're like, I'm okay with it. And that is just really heartbreaking for us, because we obviously don't want to see that happen.
And to see them like going out in this way where they get turned into Titans, and you know that like that means that all of their friends who are immune to this are destined to kill them essentially in order to survive, is just even more like, that's the worst kind. Worse than Sasha's death, worse than Hanji's death. Like, there can't really be any other way to it than like, that's just foul and hard. Um, really made me feel for these characters more than I already do. But with tears in their eyes as their friends and family literally attack them, the Titan Shifters and Ackermans have to make one last attempt to end Eren. Reiner is, you know, again, tears in his eyes. He's just saying, like, when will our torment end? And it's like, that's truly what it is for them. It's like, when will their torment end? Haven't these characters gone through enough? Isn't this just like too much at this point for them to keep moving forward?
You'd think so, but again, we come back to the point, which is like this bug, this parasite that creeps, like literally in the scene and like figuratively on these characters of humanity. Like, there will be like endless suffering, but they're gonna persevere anyway. They have to. And so even at the end of like this impossible day and this impossible battle that they've had, they're like tasked with like what's even more impossible is that they have to like go kill their friend, and they have to like keep persevering in this fight until it's over, or until they do die, because it can only go one of two ways. They have been through a lot, but this isn't going to end until there's a defeat on one of the sides.
Yeah, I think this is really tough. Like, you would think it's enough, but it's not, just because, like, this is a war, and unfortunately, there are no rules in love and war. And so at this point, you have to kind of separate yourself from the ideal in saying, like, when is my suffering going to end, to when will this battle be over? Because even after the battle ends, your suffering might not either. And that's something that's just kind of part of life, is like, your suffering truly, like, hardships will never truly end. It's the what you do with them. And so that's kind of where Reiner is at the point. Like, like, the entire squad needs to make the decision that, like, no, this is not enough. Like, we have one last job to do, and we know how it ends, so we know they are able to step up to the plate, but it's still, like, very sad to watch. Like, having to continually do so isn't easy, and that's something to be said for as well.
Shout out to Reiner, man. He has really gone through a lot, and he's like, there's been so many memes of him, he's just like kind of there, but he's really pulling his weight in this episode. So Mikasa is having a splitting headache as her and Levi are like on the back of Falco and moving towards Eren, and Levi's like, Mikasa, like, pull yourself together. She can't even hear him, though, it seems, as he's trying to say this to her, because she is having this vision, and what we see is this cabin life that her and Eren are sharing. It it all goes back to, like, what if she had said something different that day that Eren asked her what he is to her? Is this like, is this what we're seeing, where it's like, did this happen in just like an alternate timeline, or is this simply a vision of what could have been for them?
I think maybe the splitting headache. I I would like to think it's Aaron somehow showing her what could have been, and that, like, maybe in a different universe, like, they ended up together, um, and that would be really nice. However, realistically, I think that it's really just like her, like, in her final moments, like, saying, "Well, now I have to do this." And now my brain's, like, showing me everything that could have been or should have been, in the event that I did what I said I thought I was going to do. And it's really hard to watch, because Mikas has been through a lot at this point, right? Like, she's been there for Eren every step of the way, and now, like, in her final moments with him, she kind of fumbled it because she couldn't say the words that she needed. I guess kind of a JJK reference, like, the words that cursed you are in the back of my throat, and big sad.
Yeah. I'm very conflicted on this scene. Not because I didn't like enjoy it for what it was, but as far as like whether or not we think that something like this was something that Aaron showed her like through the visions, or something that she's like self-imposing, like a dose of copium a little bit, or like is it possible that this is like some alternate version of reality that's breaking through? I really think the answer could be any or all of the above, because we've established Aaron's ability to like move through time, and we know that time is not linear. Time is like cyclical and fluid. So between that and like the paths, and also like I know we haven't gotten there quite yet, but keeping in mind exactly where this story starts, the exact first panel, and like the cyclical nature of that, we can come back to that in a minute, but it makes me think that there is a possibility that there is an alternate universe where this might have happened, where there might have been a peaceful last couple of years for the two of them together. And maybe that's copium on my part, but I we'll get to it. We'll get to it. I'm going to leave it there.
Yeah, I think no matter how many ways I look at this scene, I think there's a lot of different. It's kind of like the talk from Zeke. You know, Isayama is really good at writing very well done stories where it can be interpreted differently, and I felt like this scene again is up to the interpretation of the viewer. Is Ymir showing this to her, you know? But we know that the way time works in Attack on Titan is different than the real world. So definitely a beautiful scene, and it makes my heart break because it's like, man, even though in this scene Aaron is just like waiting out the rest of his life until he dies, essentially, it still is like they at least got those few years of happiness together. But at the end of this cabin scene, he tells her to, you know, throw away the scarf when he is gone. And the scarf has been with us this entire story. It's held so much weight in the story. And we then, you know, flash back to present day, or just, you know, the Mikasa that was having the headache, and she states no, she can't get rid of it. She ties it tighter. And in my opinion, one of the best action sequences of the year 2023, right up there with Sun Halo Dragon Head Dance. Levi and Mikasa aim for him one last time in this gorgeous scene of them falling from Falco with their ODM gear trying to get inside Aaron's mouth where Mikasa believes his head is. Levi assists Mikasa into getting her into that mouth, and one final look, Aaron opens his eyes, which have been closed for the majority of, actually, since the rumbling began. He's kept his eyes closed, but he opens them to look her in the eyes, and then she slices his head off.
Oh yeah. I mean, where to start? This scene is animated so beautifully. It's absolutely up there with the top animated scenes of 2023. And that is a tall order because there was a lot of like really incredible work done by a lot of really talented, dedicated animators and artists and studios that put out a lot of content that I am very grateful for, especially knowing that Mappa in particular was overworked and underpaid, and that there was a whole controversy that probably still needs resolution. This scene was like nothing short of incredible. Absolutely justifies, I think, the wait that we had to go through. Like when I was first reading this, Tom and I were both looking at it. We're like, how are they going to do this?
Yeah.
The whole rumbling, by the way, not like, and this scene in particular, and like this fight that's happened on his back, that everything that's built up to this final moment is completely worth it and is really a feat of current animation practices and like where the industry is at. So I think that it's like absolutely a well-deserved standing ovation for this finale. Beautiful, heartbreaking, and really encapsulates the hell that they keep mentioning that they're in. Like these visuals are very stark and scary. And then there's something soft about the moment that Mikasa does enter. It's like slow motion almost. And you know, there's been like lots of talk on the internet about how like in Aaron's POV, both like drawn by Isayama and in the anime, she's like more beautiful from his point of view, and we see that like softness in her face and expression, even though we know that maybe would have lasted like a fraction of a moment. And it's the last thing he sees is like this woman that he also loves, and that there's this unrequited feeling, but this greater urge from humanity's pervasiveness in trying to keep moving forward. And his version of that and their version of that don't work. I was like proud of her because it had to happen, but I was also heartbroken for her because it had to happen. And Attack on Titan is not necessarily a love story, but it is. It's a really tragic love story, and a story about that perseverance, and that sometimes like one has to outweigh the other. So there's no other way that I think that this could have happened. It had to be Mikasa, it had to be Eren, and it had to end this way.
All right, I'm gonna mention two things here. First off, when they started releasing like preview images and they released Aaron's eyes open, how dare they? How dare they release that as like the image
All
that
the
they're going to
manga
show us?
readers were like,
We all like, if you know, like if you don't know, if you know, it's like that. Second of all, this actually kind of reminds me of Demon Slayer. And I'm going to relate this to when Tanjiro used the form Blessed Drought after the rain or something like that, or Blessed Rain
Blessed
after the
rain after
drought.
the drought.
I said that. I keep mixing up my words. Love.
I get
Love it.
that. I do that all the time.
But Mikasa ends him almost in like a peaceful way. And it's like swift and clean and making it so that way like he's not in suffering. And I think while it's really hard to do that, I think she did it in the kindest way possible. And I think that's what's most important is like it's showing the love of like, I'm not going to make you suffer. And because at that point when he opens his eyes, I think he realizes the tragedies he's committed and the atrocities that he's done. I think him keeping his eyes closed the entire time was his way of getting through what he thought was his destiny to do the rumbling, and how he was coping with it. And kind of like we saw in the first couple chapters of the end, when he's like in the air as a child, like he's imagining himself there, like acting for freedom.
Yeah, I think she got some closure because I think that having that vision of them in the cabin kind of made it feel like that was their last conversation instead as well. And I do feel like this was all destined to be, like Emily said, this wasn't necessarily a love story, but also their love for each other is truly kind of the backbone of the story. And I think that comes to fruition in this moment. And we're going to talk a little bit more about it in the next chapter because I have a lot of thoughts, but we're coming to the end of this chapter, so I want to kind of get to it. But I it happened so quickly, and I think Mikasa wanted to do it quickly so that it was painless for him, but for him to open his eyes and see her, and I almost feel like there was ever so slightly a little bit of relief in his eyes that she was there to end it, because I don't think at the end of the day he ever really wanted to commit such an atrocious genocide, essentially. And to see her there and to know what that entailed with her doing it. And also her being the one to do it, I think is very important because we see here as she does it, she says, Itarashai, Eren. She seals it with a kiss, and Ymir is watching. And thus the end of this chapter. So there is something to be said about the fact that Ymir watches as Mikasa kisses Eren, showing that romantic love. But we will talk a little bit more about that in the next episode because I think they dive into those narratives a little bit more. But what did you think of this moment? I know a lot of people were kind of creeped out by the idea of Mikasa kissing him after she had beheaded him and he was already dead, but I thought it was a really powerful moment. What did you think? Wow? Nah?
I'm gonna be brave here and say I was creeped out. I was so creeped out by this. I was like, I get it, but I also did not get it at all. I was like, it gave me the ick personally, and the reason being is because like I guess it's like my like preconceived notion of like death, but also this is a world where titans exist, so like putting that aside, I guess it makes sense for a romantic gesture, but also I didn't know. I think like even just holding the head like close to her heart would have given me a similar representation, but I know it's for the unrequited feelings of like what she really wanted to do with Aaron and like have a child maybe or like give him a kiss. So I get it. Still kind of creeped me out.
I can respect that. I do think that, like, so my POV, it didn't bother me. And, like, a couple of reasons. The first one is that I think Mikasa is, like, doing her absolute best right now, but she's probably having a bit of a mental break having to do this. Like, how could she not? And so in this scene is, like, still intercut with the cabin scene. I think it's important to mention that, like, what we see immediately, like, edited with this is what looks like Aaron taking a nap on the bench, and Mikasa is giving him the kiss there. And so I think that that insinuates to me that that's kind of what she is seeing at the moment. And so her sense of time is skewed, and she's just, like, not in a completely proper mental state, probably barely enough to, like, make this happen. Um, so I was fine with it, knowing that she's, like, cut between a bunch of different realities and, like, perceptions. And I think that's solidified by Ymir being there watching as, like, the ruler and creator of the paths and these alternate universes. Like, I think she can see all at the same time too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, yes, this reality is true, but that doesn't mean that this other one isn't necessarily. And not necessarily related to the kiss, but something that I caught watching it again. And I love with Attack on Titan that I can catch something new every single time I watch it. But I think it's right at this moment in the cabin scene. If not, it might be the moment before. But I think it's when Aaron's on the bench and she's giving him this kiss, and then it cuts to, like, an overhead, like, bird's eye view, and we see the shadow of, like, the raven pass over really, really fast. I just thought that was, like, such a beautiful touch. And maybe I'll talk about that at the end of next episode, but, like, the use of the bird symbolism in this show is so cool. So I won't dive into that now, but I thought it was interesting that right at this last moment for them that we see it pass over really quickly one more time.
Yeah, I think that the next chapter is going to really wrap things up, obviously, because it is the final chapter that we will go over in the next episode. But just my 2 cents of the kiss, I do agree with Emily. I think she was kind of envisioning that cabin rather than him, just being a head that she just beheaded. But also with Ymir watching, and we'll leave it at this, but that was very important for Ymir to see specifically that, because we'll talk about that in the next episode and why it was important. But still a beautiful ending to Aaron, honestly. I think for a while I knew he needed to die, but for it to happen this way at the hand of Mikasa is heartbreaking, bittersweet, but also beautiful. So we are once again going to save our favorite moments for the final recap of AOT next time. So we're going to move into our Eldian secret, which I thought was really interesting. So as we know, when Mikasa slices Aaron's head, she says "Iterashai." It is translated for us as English speakers into "see you later." Like, I'll see you later. However, I feel like "Iterashai" is a little bit more complicated than that, and I think it's a little more nuanced than what we as English speakers are saying, because "Iterashai" is most commonly used when someone is leaving work or running errands or just leaving the house in general and going to be back within the day. So they say "itekimasu," and whoever is at home says "iterashai," and it is more literally translated to "please leave and come back." So for us to get "see you later," that is more commonly used as "matane" or "jane," where it's like more you're going to see them again, but you don't really know when. "Sayonara" is like you don't know when you're going to see them again, and it's probably going to either be a while or never again. So that almost feels like it matches more. So with all this in mind, to me, it makes Mikasa's words a bit more like she truly can't accept that she won't see Eren again. And that's just like my perspective of it. I think there's a lot more nuance to what she's saying here than what we get, because she says it specifically like that, as if she truly is like, please leave and come back. But he's dead. He can't come back. So I thought that was really interesting. And I think it's a beautiful way of writing on Isayama's part that unfortunately just kind of gets glossed over for us as English speakers because we're viewing this through a translation. So interesting things. Mikasa doesn't want to lose him, truly, but she just wants the old Eren back, is the way I kind of read that. But with that, our next episode of Attack on Titan will be the very final chapter. So hang on to your hats, y'all. Hopefully it won't be 3 months later, but I can't make any promises because life is crazy and Demon Slayer is coming back soon. But please don't forget to like and subscribe if you're watching this on YouTube. Drop a comment what you thought of today's episode and tell your friends about us as well. If you do ask us a question in the comments or using the Q&A feature on Spotify, we will answer it in a future episode. Also, if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere that you can get a podcast, make sure you download the episode and share it with your friends as well. And follow us on social media. We got TikTok and Instagram, Hashira Half. Twitter is TikTok and Instagram is Hashira Half Hour. Twitter is Hashira Half. And with that, we will see you again very soon. Shinzo Sasageo!
Sasageo Iterashai.
Sasageo.
Sasageo, Sasageo. Okay.
Not the